everyone, this is Sophie, and in this video, I'll take you through the process of creating a manga story. I have just released a new manga called The Moral Scale on Manga Plus Creators by SHUEISHA. So when is a better time to show you my first steps? I have researched the different ways of storytelling. Some of the references I have used are in the description of this video if you want to learn more. In this video, I will summarize the key concepts I learned that have helped me write my most recent manga, The Moral Scale. This is the most critical step when creating a new manga and a perfect beginning for this series of tutorials, starting with the basic question of how to tell a story. First, we will discuss what are the main story elements. A manga story is just like any story that needs to have three main elements. They act as a foundation to a good story: setting, plot, and characters. Additional elements that are integrated within these are conflict and theme, which will also be discussed with examples from my stories. Let's start with the setting. The setting is the time and location where the story takes place. The setting gives a feel to the story. So a story taking place in a small village will give off a different feel than one taking place in an advanced city. The Ocean of Secrets manga, for instance, takes place during the time of writing in 2016 in Nova Scotia, Canada. Even the environment can be included in your setting. The kingdoms in my story were always windy due to their high altitude, and even when my characters sailed, I accounted for the weather. Which brings us to the next component, which is characters. A character is a person, animal, or a personified object that interacts with the story. Characters are the driving force of the story, allowing the reader to experience the story through them. How do they drive the story? The main character evolves and overcomes conflicts, while secondary characters they provide support. What makes a character unique is their motivation and what they seek to accomplish. It's very important to define the character's needs and wants before starting your manga. Motivation can change as characters evolve. I will give you an example after explaining what motivations are. According to Maslow's pyramid, your character can be motivated by any of these three needs. Basic needs, which includes survival. This, for example, when a character is trying to save their village or survive a zombie apocalypse. Desires and belongings are psychological needs. For example, Leah in Ocean of Secrets manga has always wanted to find a place where she feels welcome and loved. This is because she was not treated well in the orphanage. Finally, self-actualization includes a character that thrives in what they do, reaching their utmost goal. These include scientists, artists, musicians, or anyone that has a goal once all these needs are achieved. Ask yourself what your character goal is, and then keep asking why you will end up on one of these needs. After establishing what your character is fighting to accomplish and find out what they need, and the driving force for their action, the next question is, why can't they achieve their goal? What is stopping them from doing so? There has to be a conflict, whether external or internal. External means a war, earthquake, a monster, but the internal are usually the character's own struggle. It could be their own ego or fear stopping them from reaching their goal. You are close to developing your character. You should make sure that your readers can relate to your character's goal or show how relevant the goal is to your character. As the plot progresses, a character's goal may shift. In Ocean of Secrets, Leah's first goal was to find out where she came from. However, after finding out the truth, which puts everyone in danger, her goal is to survive and save her kingdom from the Pirate King. Therefore, it's okay if your character's goal changes throughout the story. Just make sure that it's in tune with the character's inner desires. A good character is a likable and relatable one. Showing people in your story liking your character will establish empathy and make them more interesting. But make sure you include flaws and weaknesses and stay away from the Mary-Sue or Marty-Sue trope, which means a character that is flawless and makes no mistakes at all. In order to show character development, your character needs to evolve. Make these flaws real. There's a tricky balance that needs to be struck. You don't want your character to have any unwanted traits like being deceitful or backstabbing. However, at the same time, you should invest in writing flaws that can be corrected. This resembles real life. We all have flaws, but we learn and evolve. And that's what gives your story a realistic and relatable feel. Last point about characters, make them proactive. Once you start studying stories, even your own, you realize what could have enhanced it. As a word of advice, don't let things happen to your characters, let your character move. While a plot-driven story isn't bad, but having your character take responsibility and take the decision to travel somewhere or drop something will leave your readers with excitement and thrill. Before we move to the plot, I'd like to invite you to read my new manga, The Moral Scale, on Manga Plus Creators by SHUEISHA. It's a newly launched platform for sharing manga that is linked to Manga Plus, which is a site that publishes famous titles like One Piece, Naruto, and Spy Family as they release in Japan. There are prized monthly awards, with winners getting the chance to get published on Jump Plus. The contests are held in English and Spanish. Feel free to share your work with me. If you do, I'd love to read it and give you feedback. Now let's talk about the plot structures. There are many examples of plot structures. The most popular is the 5-act structure. Even though I did not follow a strict plot structure when I wrote my first manga, but after doing some research I figured that it's very similar to the hero's journey structure by Joseph Campbell. It's a common archetype that involves a hero who sets out on an adventure, gains knowledge, wins or loses, but they acquire knowledge and they return home transformed. In this video, we'll discuss the most common structure, which is the 5-act plot structure, and give some examples. Remember that these are just story templates. You don't have to follow them to the letter. The 5-act plot is developed by Gustav Freytag. It's called the Freytag pyramid, and it basically looks like this. You can cut down the story into 5 acts. The first one, which is Act 1, is the introduction. This is where your character starts in her or his daily life. It starts with exposition. This is where you set the tone of your story, introduce the settings and the characters. The length of this act will depend on how complex is your story. A complex fictional world might require a longer introduction. This stage ends with an inciting incident, when something happens that sets your character in motion. Let's give an example of a story. An 18-year-old boy living in a village receives an anonymous letter asking for help. The letter is the catalyst that led our character to move out of their comfort zone. Then it's a rising action in Act 2, where you add suspense to the story. During the second act, the conflict escalates for your characters. Here, your main character have to leave their familiar world and embarks on a new adventure. Your protagonist is trying to figure out who sent him the letter asking for help, for example. As the character investigates the person, finds more clues, things get more complicated. As the conflict unfolds, this is when the reader gets to know the character's motives, the world of the story and the themes. It's usually one of the longest acts. In Act 3 is the climax. Everything that has happened before led to this moment, which is the point of no return, where your characters can't turn back from where they've started. For example, When the boy found out the location of the person needing help, he was captured by the same group and is fighting to save his life. The story's conflict peaks, and we learn the fate of the main characters. Whatever the event, there must be something valuable they can learn from. This is where they acquire the knowledge they were lacking or realize the flaw and attempts to fix it. Then we have the falling action in Act 4, the aftermath of the climax. The story is nearing its end. What will the character do to overcome the hurdle? Will the boy save the person, or will he escape alone? How did that man contact him, and why are they being kidnapped? Your character has changed because of Act 3, but they haven't yet succeeded in their goal or become the person they will be at the end. This is where you need to tie up the loose ends and solve all the mysteries. You gradually build towards a resolution. In the last act, which is the resolution, it's when the main conflict of the story is resolved. This is where you end the story and bring it to a conclusion. It's also where the theme of the story is shown. This act shows how much your character have changed and whether or not they have achieved their goal. In our story, the boy overcomes his fears, saves the innocent person, and exposes the kidnapper. The theme is the idea or the message of a story that you want to convey. The theme can be a value, lesson, or something you truly believe in. Among the themes are compassion, courage, friendship, and love, to name a few. So let's recap what are the necessary first steps to creating a manga story. First is writing a document with all the points we've previously discussed, including setting, characters, and plot. Then we write the script for chapter 1 in a Word document. I hope you find this video helpful. When I first started writing manga, I didn't know about all these concepts, and it would have been a great help when writing Ocean of Secrets. Like your main character, you will improve your writing style with every story you write. It's only when you give up that you stop improving. I know many of you have stories that are waiting to be told. I hope this video gives you an insight into the vast world of story building techniques that can enhance your story and make it more engaging. Finally, I'd like to remind you to read my ongoing manga, The Moral Scale, on Manga Plus Creators by SHUEISHA. Thank you for watching, enjoy your holidays, and I will see you in the next class.